The Echoes of Briarcliff Asylum. Briarcliff Asylum was once a grand institution in the late 1800s designed to house society's outcasts, the mentally ill, the criminally insane, and those who simply didn't fit into the norms of the time. Over the years, it became infamous for the inhumane treatments inflicted on its patients. Electroshock therapy, ice baths, and lobotomies were commonplace, but the most feared practice was the silence room. The silence room was deep in the basement, far from the prying eyes of inspectors and visitors. Patients who were considered too dangerous or too vocal about their mistreatment were taken there. No one who entered ever came back the same. The room was said to be soundproof, designed to keep the screams of the tortured from reaching the upper floors. But what made it truly horrifying was the rumors that it wasn't just the living who occupied it. In the 1950s, a nurse named Eleanor began working at Briarcliff. She was compassionate and horrified by what she saw. Her kindness drew the attention of the asylum's most notorious patient, a man known only as Jacob. Jacob was a giant of a man, mute, but his eyes spoke of unimaginable horrors. Eleanor often found him staring at her, as if trying to communicate something urgent. One night, Eleanor was called to the basement for an emergency. The orderly, who usually accompanied her, refused to go, his face pale with fear. As she descended the stairs alone, the air grew colder, and she could hear a faint, rhythmic thudding. The closer she got to the silence room, the louder it became, like the desperate pounding of fists against thick walls. Inside the room, Eleanor found Jacob, strapped to a gurney, his eyes wide with terror. But he wasn't alone. The shadows in the room seemed to move with a life of their own, swirling around him. As she approached, the door slammed shut behind her, plunging the room into darkness. Eleanor fumbled for the light switch, her heart racing, but when the lights flickered back on, she was no longer alone. The walls were covered in bloody handprints, and the once empty corners were filled with the faint outlines of other patients, those who had disappeared into the silence room. Their faces were contorted in agony, their eyes hollow and pleading. The air was thick with the sound of whispers, countless voices overlapping in a desperate cacophony. Eleanor realized with growing dread that these were the souls of the forgotten, trapped within the walls of Briarcliff, doomed to relive their torment for eternity. Jacob, still strapped to the gurney, began to convulse violently. The shadows closed in, and Eleanor could feel icy fingers brushing against her skin, pulling her towards the gurney. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they were all she could hear. The next morning, the orderlies found Eleanor lying on the floor of the silence room, her hair turned white, her eyes wide open, and her mouth stitched shut. No one could explain how it had happened. Jacob was never seen again, and the silence room was sealed, never to be opened again. But the story didn't end there. Decades later, when Briarcliff was finally shut down, workers tasked with clearing out the basement reported hearing soft cries and desperate whispers emanating from the walls. Some claimed to see fleeting shadows, always just out of the corner of their eyes. And in the silence of the night, if you stood close enough to the sealed door of the silence room, you could still hear Eleanor's muffled screams, echoing through the darkness. Enjoyed the content? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more awesome videos your way. Don't forget to click the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.